Welcome to Catch a Star. Hi, I'm Nola Joy Carello, reporting from Music Circus. With me is Sacramento's favorite song and dance man, Ken Berry, who's starring in My One and Only. Ken is also a very popular actor with a flair for comedy. Welcome to Sacramento again, Ken.
Thank you.
Okay, now you were fantastic last night, and I have to ask you, what is your secret, or how do you prepare for such a demanding role when leading in Mama's Family, you don't really have a chance to sing and dance all the time?
No, and there aren't any more variety shows on television, as you know, so musical variety shows, so I don't get a chance to really stay in shape. And I'm so lazy that I've got a studio at my house, but I just never go out there. And I've always done this. I've done this all my life, and I'm embarrassed to admit it, but I wait until I get a job, and then I really try to work out hard and try to get in shape for it. And I'm always a little behind. I'm not really in great shape yet.
How do you juggle your career or balance it between movies, television, and now theater?
Well, it really has never been a problem for me. A problem. I'd like to have that problem. I'd like to be a movie star for sure, but I've only done a couple of movies in my life. I do a lot of television, thank goodness, and I've done a lot of television all my life. But I was doing a show, like, it was canceled back in the early 70s, called Mayberry RFD. And if you're not working in a television series, or if you're not a big movie star or whatever, you just can't make a living in town. You can't make a living doing guest shots as an actor. They just don't pay enough, not nearly enough. You can't even make the rent. So I started going on the road. That was the first year that I ever did stock, was 1974, and I came up here and did a production of No No Nanette. That was my first year here.
You know, you mentioned movies. You're going to have to help me with the name of one of my favorites, something to do with Herbie, Love Bug, or something like that?
It was the second in that sequence of movies that Walt Disney made about a little Volkswagen that had a personality of its own. And Dean Jones did the first one, and he did another one later. I did one called Herbie Rides Again.
It was one of my favorites. What have been some of your joys and headaches during your career?
Well, the greatest joy that I can imagine was the day that I found out that I actually was going to have a lead role in a television series. I never thought that would ever happen. I worked for many years in Los Angeles as a bit player, you know, as a, well, they call them day players, because simply they're contracted by the day. And I was doing little theater at night in Los Angeles and working during the day in television. And it was going well enough, you know, I was paying the rent and eating and everything. But the day that I got my first real television series in which I had a lead role was probably the happiest moment that I can recall in the business. And then that whole 2 years that I put in on a series called F Troop just happened to be a joyful experience. I couldn't wait to go to work in the morning because the people on the show were wonderful. Well, I've been so lucky all my life in that regard. It can be a really awful experience to walk onto a set where somebody is misbehaving and the star is nasty or the director is terrible. You know, that's an awful experience. You don't want to be there. But this was just happiness all the time. It was like recess every day.
What advice would you give the young people who want to be an overnight success as an actor, a movie star? Well, I know it's not that easy.
Well, what I can tell you about that is that it probably won't happen. You know, the odds are tremendously against it. Now, there are certain people who have lucked out and have become an overnight success. They have that certain quality that appeals to audiences, and they don't need the skill necessarily, but that's very rare. If you want to be a working actor, I think that you have to hone your skills, and you really have to work at it. You know, take classes, get on stage as often as you can, get in front of the camera as often as you can, no matter how small the part. You know, the most important single role that I ever played in terms of earning a living was in a little cabaret theater in Los Angeles. It was a book show, and we were earning $11 a week. And in the middle of the run, because we weren't doing any business, we had to take a salary cut to $7 a week. And you know, a lot of people won't do things like that. But because I did that, and because it attracted some of the casting people, because of their association with the people who had written the show, I started to work. And I kept working and working, and one thing led to another, and you know, as a result, you know, I'm still hanging in there, and I'm still making a living. I certainly don't think of myself as anything more than a working actor, but even that's a miracle, you know, to be able to do something that you really love, and to make a living in this business is miraculous.
I know that Sacramento really loves you, and you're one of my favorite actors. But sometimes, you know, critics can be unkind, and hopefully they haven't been unkind to you. But if they have been, how do you personally cope with criticism?
Well, that kind of criticism I don't cope with. I just ignore it. I can't read reviews because if they say something good about you, you lock in on that. I mean, if they, for instance, if they say something positive about a certain moment in the show, I mean, even if it's glowing, even if it's a compliment, then you start thinking about that while you're on stage performing, and that gets in the way. So I don't read that, and certainly I have to admit that I can't handle criticism. I can't handle somebody saying that I stink because I'm doing the best I can, and that's all I can do.
Okay. What about the rapport with the other fellow actors and actresses? Now, right now, you are starring in My One and Only, and it seems like such an enthusiasm, so much energy, and it looks like you get along very well with your other actors and actresses. How do you achieve that?
Well, it comes from someplace. It usually comes from either the director or the so-called star, and it filters down through the company, I think. And so I think it's one's responsibility to behave well in a light-hearted way. I think levity is important on any set or on any stage, and I happen to like people, and I've rarely run into any nasty people in this business. I happen to love being in the business, and I like all the people. This happens to be a particularly good company. Boy, there are a bunch of nice people in this company.
Not only that, what about how do you mentally prepare yourself for performing in front of a live audience, which I would assume lots of fun than in a studio atmosphere?
Well, that's our producer who just walked.
Oh, all right. Everyone just wants to say hello to Ken.
Well, to make myself go on stage, I get nervous, you know, particularly opening night, and I have to stand backstage and remind myself that this is fun, and this is what I set out to do. So I should make it as much fun as I possibly can, and you really have to stop worrying about words and dance steps, so you can't think about those just before you go on, because it'll really mess you up. And I stand backstage and I just say, charge, have fun.
And you do. All right, now, My One and Only, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't that a remake of the 1927 musical Funny Face?
It started out that way. It no longer is. If you had ever read the original book, you'd understand why, because it was an all Gershwin score, but the original book, which I read, they were going to do a revival of it, so they sent it to me, and it really is not a good book at all. It's so dated, you can't do it. So Tommy Tune and whoever got a hold of it, and they decided to make it into My One and Only, which is, it has a thin book, but it's just a nice, light, fluffy piece of entertainment with all these wonderful Gershwin tunes and lots of tap dancing. It's a wonderful show.
Now, did you make up your own routines?
No. This is the first time that I haven't, as a matter of fact. I wanted to do the original choreography. I wanted to do the entire show as it was originally done on Broadway, and Jeff Calhoun, our director-choreographer, was Tommy Tune's understudy, and he in fact went on Broadway for 2 weeks playing this role that I'm playing. And so he remembers all of it, and we are doing almost exactly the original choreography.
And what's your major goal in life? What do you want to do from, well, say tomorrow on, if you had your chance?
Well, I like what I'm doing right now. As a matter of fact, I'm doing a series called Mama's Family. It's not on the network, so we don't have any network interference. We're doing, we have a really nice company of people, and it's like a part-time job. The schedule is so easy. I get to stay in town all year, and the money's nice, and I just can't complain. I'm doing just about what I want to do now. You know, if I had my druthers, they would still be making motion picture musicals, and I would be a motion picture musical song and dance man. That's what I always wanted to be, but that's not available.
We want to bring back the musicals. Well, thank you so much, Ken Berry. We want you to come back all the time to Sacramento. And folks, my personal critique and rating for the performances of my one and only, I'd give it a 9+, and for Ken Berry's performance, I'd score it a 10+. Until next time, for Catch a Star on Cable 23, this has been Nola Joy Carello. I want to thank my cameraman today, David Michael, and I'll see you at the Music Circus. Have a great day.